Would you mind giving a quick intro about how you got into this? What's your background?
So my background is, and hi everybody, hello. My background is that I started my career in the natural health industry. I got a job in a health food store when I was 15 years old, and I just fell in love with the entire idea that your food is your medicine, and there were supplements and everything. And then I opened up a health food store when I was 20, and one of my first experiences with hemp was Charles Holmes, who has left us recently, and he's one of our pioneers. He walked into my store with a bag, one of the first generation bags of hemp protein, and he explained to me what ediston protein was, what omega-3/6 was, and how it was this absolutely perfect food. And being the hippie I was, I fell in love with it. I remember this because it was generation 1 hemp protein, so it was really gritty. And so as soon as he left, I grabbed the hemp protein, I scooped it up, and I put it in water and I drank it down, and it was dirt, like tasted like dirt. But I still fell in love with it as a product, and it has been one thing throughout all of my research with natural health and all of the crazy hippie things I've done. Hemp food has always been part of it. And I mean, I truly believe that there's a lot of different aspects to this plant. And, Canada has really made themselves a market with the food, and the food is so important for us, not just for us, for our animals, for everything. We need to eat this. This was our first crop. And so anyway, further on to that, I owned a health food store for 15 years. And then I graduated and became a manufacturer. I had my own supplement company.
Graduated?
Yeah, of course. You're an entrepreneur. You go from place to place. And with that, I really learned how to do product development and how, you don't just take an idea, you have to take an idea to market. That means packaging, that means figuring out barcodes, that means figuring out regulations, figuring out how to get it onto store shelves. And so when I left my store and my manufacturing company, I started working with Hemco. I was their first innovation lead. I was developing all of their products and everything. And from, once again, idea to final packaged product. And I think that that's really important because it's not something you teach in school. Like, I used to always say as an entrepreneur, is like, you fake it till you make it, right? And I kind of learned that part of things. And so now in my job I actually like to say I work for a plant. My boss is a plant, and sometimes she's good to me, sometimes she's bad to me, but either way, I'm stuck with her as a boss. I help bring companies and countries to market.
Okay, so I want to back up because your last statement that you just said, you help bring companies and countries to market. I want to dive into. So, but before, this is a topic that comes up a lot. Why hemp-based protein? Why plant-based protein? What about the hemp protein is it more digestible? Can you kind of give some facts that you are familiar with and aware of around that?
Yeah. So hemp is ediston form protein. So normally we digest protein. We take protein into our bodies and we turn it into the amino acids. Then we turn it into our own protein, right? And that is our muscles and our body. Well, hemp is the most biologically similar protein to ours, which means it's actually the most biologically available. I'm not a fan of soy. And plant-based proteins, we need to understand that not all plant-based proteins are the same. And hemp protein has the ability for us to digest it better. It has the right balance of fat, which fat is important. And so for me, it's not necessarily an alternative. I'm not a vegetarian. But I believe that it is a perfect food that we can assimilate and we can use, and so can our animals. This is really important. I worked in Paraguay. We can talk about that later. But what I've seen is we grow GMO soy to feed our animals, rather than a perfect food that is omega-3. Hemp is the only food that has the perfect ratio of omega-3 and 6. It is this bioavailable protein that we can digest and we can eat readily, and it grows like a weed. So that makes sense.
Weird name. I actually saw a call out, and I've got to give a shout out, but it's interesting. I saw this the other day in a newsletter that there's a big call for feral weed. People are looking for what's naturally growing all over, right? And this just goes back to like it's something that has grown as ditchweed our whole lives in all different parts of our country. And here we've got this food source and all of these resources, right? And you and I were talking a little bit earlier, and what I actually got goosebumps because it hits me at how impactful we can be to areas like Paraguay or Africa or, Latin America, these smaller countries, underserved countries. And so can you talk a little bit about work that's being done on a global scale? And then what does it mean to take a country to market or?
Yes. Okay. So I've had the luck and the beauty to, especially in 2019, I mean, 2020 changed a bit of things, but in 2019, I traveled to almost 20 different countries, educating on hemp and planting it. I got to see Bologna, and it was beautiful in Bologna. They even have this 400-year-old fresco, and it said "Cannabis Protectio," is because cannabis was their textiles. It was their clothing, is cannabis protection, right? But globally, this is the world's most popular plant, right? Everybody knows what the leaf is, whether they think about it in one way or the other. I happen to think that actually our plant had a protection mechanism built into it, because nobody really knew that it was something you could smoke before Reefer Madness came out, right? And then what ended up happening is that it all went underground, but we as humans saved the seeds because of that. And further to what you were talking about with the ditchweed stuff, I collect cannabis strains from around the world. And this is my passion, is trying to find the best hemp strains possible. I know. It's like, I've got the coolest little seed collection. Yeah.
See, you've got so much. I just want to be you when I grow up.
Well, I actually, further, I said before, I work for a plant.
Yeah.
As soon as you just give yourself the opportunity, and this is my spiritual side, as soon as you give yourself the opportunity to say, this is what I do, she'll reward you. But collecting all that feral hemp is actually how we're going to not even regenerate. Remember, we're just remembering this plant right now. It's nothing that we're doing right now is new. We've done this for 5,000 years. This is the oldest cultivated crop in history. And so we're just remembering it. And it's in the ditches, it's all over the place. And yes, so sorry, I got a little bit off track. We were talking globally. Anyway, point is I actually collect ditchweed from around the world. So if anybody has ditchweed, hook me up. I'm all into it.
Yes.
I have some myself. So
okay. I love it, love it. Okay, so talking about taking industries to market. Right?
Well,
I'm curious, or not industries, I'm sorry, countries, right? And then, because we talk a lot about taking companies to market, but again, back to what's really impactful, what we can do to feed our people or feed the animals, like we said, is even more important, because that's what feeds us. I'm kind of curious from you.
There's one thing that I found out being a supplement manufacturer before, is going through regulation. And I mean, regulation is got many different facets to it. And, one thing that Canada has done, Canada being one of the first countries to legalize even for, cannabis, even for smoking, is that, there's a certain path that we have to follow in order to do it right. And so with our company, ABRI, Advanced Botanical and Biomass Research Institute, we consult with different countries who are planning on legalizing, whether they just want to do medical or they just want to do industrial, or where they want to go on the scale. We advise them through regulatory, through the fact that, I've been working in South America now for 2 years, and a lot of people don't realize that South America, everybody thinks weed grows everywhere. And especially people think that, weed would grow in, the cartel areas and stuff. Well, the fact is it's a northern hemisphere crop. It's actually not that easy to grow. And so, it's sourcing the seeds, telling people how to harvest it. Because we've taken down combines many times because it's a strong plant, and guiding people through to the point. This is, as we were saying before, this is a global startup. And I do, from my experience of opening up a store when I was 20, which, I mean, it was a lot of work. I remember promising myself I would never actually get into a startup ever again. And then I convinced myself when I started my manufacturing company that it wasn't a startup because I already had a business. And then then when I left that, I get into the biggest global startup in the entire world. And, startups, they are literally start up. And so there's these countries that are legalizing, and we have to, not even just like, we don't want the government to do it wrong. We want them to do it in a way that's going to benefit the industry that they're going to be building. We don't want them to just legalize THC and forget about hemp. That's happened many times. We've consulted with countries that, they decided to go for medical marijuana, and we're like, why don't you grow for rope or food first?
Or what you're already exporting. Like, that's something too, when I went into some of these countries and I start talking about what we're doing, right, is like, let's look at what their main exports already are and how hemp plays a major role in that supply chain or cost or sustainability or
some of these industries that they're major exports that are no longer providing them with a windfall. Like, some of the commodity crops like sugar, and how can we in and we can move it in. I like to think that, when we go to a country and we see what the industry is, my passion is actually in herbal medicine and understanding the countries before. So I look at their culture, I look at their cultural products that they make, how they make paper and how they did it traditionally, and try to basically go, let's fit some hemp in here, let's fit some hemp in here, and make it a viable industry rather than just let's plant it and let's sell it. That doesn't work.
As much as we want this to be all about the way it makes me feel, right? That's obviously what's driving my passion. That really has got to be business. And so that's what's so exciting is I feel like for the first time, I can say the word sustainability and profitability in the same sentence, right? And I can bring major opportunity that we haven't been able to before. And when I first got into this, I can't tell you how many investors said, oh yeah, but hemp, are they tree huggers? Like, they don't want to talk if it's a loss because of the stigma, I guess, to the loss of profitability around sustainability. And so I'm really excited to see that. What's your opinion? I like your...
Oh, no, it's just, it always blows my mind is because people think that sustainability is not profitable, but you have a plant where you can literally grow the plant, put it into a processing facility, and you get food, medicine, rope, textile, building, whatever you name it, batteries, whatever you need to do. So it's actually a very profitable product if you do it right. I mean, we saw the 2018 come out and that everybody exploded into CBD. We're going to get $21,000 a kilo for all this different CBD. And it was like, but that's only this part of it, right? It's this tiny part of it. So.
Yes. Well, there's still tons of comments coming in. Okay. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about some of the real opportunity, right? Understanding how challenging it could be or can be to grow in, especially with the Southern Hemisphere, right? Talk to me about opportunities for the countries that you're working with, to be explored.
Well, working in Paraguay, I was really intrigued with it because they were already into the natural health industry, and supplying chia, supplying flax, and they understood that market. But once again, that's a very tiny little market. One of the things that I'm passionate about is, actually currently I'm in Nicaragua. I'm sweating my ass off. Nicaragua.
I am too, and I'm only in Utah, so...
Oh yeah, but is the ability to build something that will actually take down air conditioning, because you have something that breathes, and then we remove the burden that air conditioning has on the grids. And if you live in South America, the power goes out, and you're going to need to have something that is an alternative. And so I think that and the building opportunity is actually, I think, the biggest thing. I mean, Food is my passion, but especially in South America, they usually build in these brick houses that obviously they don't need insulation like they do in Canada. We need a lot of that. But they build in these brick houses that don't breathe. They take down the power grid, and we can develop things that way. I think that that's really important. Also, there's these countries that have done a bunch of, developing paper, and then, they're cutting down the rainforests. Well, those facilities still exist. We can actually integrate those facilities, and instead of taking down our beautiful rainforest, people were not supposed to cut down trees. I'm just going to say that the trees are there for a different reason. We need to leave the trees and develop something else, and we can use existing facilities in order to integrate them into hemp. And then, what I've noticed in my career in hemp is that there's no shortage of people who want to grow hemp, and there's no shortage of people who want to buy hemp. Everybody wants hemp.
It's insane. And everybody wants U.S. hemp, even though right now it's more expensive.
Well, I find everybody wants Canadian hemp, so we're going to have a Canadian hemp thing going on.
That's fair. But it's amazing to me. That right there goes back. Like, people are looking for certain products that are sourced or grown ethically as solutions.
Yeah, this makes sense. This is natural. This is the most amazing thing about this plant is when I come back to us remembering hemp is we're not doing anything new. We're just going back to what we wanted. And so it's not even just market demand. It's human appeal. Like, it just makes sense. Like, I mean, even, for somebody who works in the hemp industry, I have very few pieces of hemp clothing, which pisses me off, right? Because I should have more, but it's hard to find. And then when I find a hemp shirt and you wear it, it breathes. It doesn't shrink. It stands, like, I travel around the world. It stands the test of time and laundry and whatever I'm doing around the world. But it's something that we naturally just are inclined to want to work with, right? We're inclined to want to have. You find me any human being in the world and say, what kind of paper do you want? You want trees or hemp? They're going to say hemp.
As long as they understand it. Okay, so let me ask you this, because I'm really running in still where I live to this major disconnect to what hemp is. Here's a good example, right? And being somebody that eats, breathes, and sleeps it for the last 3 years and being new to the industry still, I've seen a big shift nationally from the high and low THC, cannabinoid or flower plant to more of the industrial applications. But this week, when I was in an event in Utah, it was like we were 5 years behind in the topics we were talking about and addressing. Not around those things, but there was zero discussion outside of the panels I was involved in around the industrial applications. And so my question is, what still is needed, and you're probably really running into this still as you enter new territories, new regions, new countries that are just legalizing. What is that? Like, what is that disconnect, or what's really working to bridge that gap?
Okay, well, it's kind of interesting, and this is my perspective on it, is actually what kept hemp in our brains, which was the THC part of things, is actually what's preventing us from teaching people what it was really about, right? So, I mean, it's kind of like, if we just think about it as a survival mechanism, that now we're no longer in survive mode, we need to move to thrive mode. And so what I think it is, I mean, I remember being at one company and I'm giving out hemp hearts as I developed a product, and it was, something we put on food, and it was hemp hearts. And everybody in the company was giggling because they thought they were going to get high, right? And so, and this comes back to when I was telling you about my introduction into this, is when I fell in love with hemp, I fell in love with it as a food source. I thought that was actually where it needed to be. And so if we can move forward from this, it comes from education. It comes from exactly what you're doing, hon. We're going to talk about it, and it comes more and more. The countries that I go to, they don't giggle anymore. They understand that there is a difference, and this is the time that it takes. Look at what happened to this plant. Like, this plant was under prohibition, censorship for over 100 years. It's going to take us a bit of time to explain what it is. Again, just time.
opinion, I think we missed the shot big time. Okay, let me rephrase this. I think it is in the best benefit to have entered this industry through the food and grain aspect instead of the THC or high THC. However, I am insanely grateful. Like you said, it's what's kept it at the front of our mind, and it's what's gotten us to where we are, you know, because it's what pulls on our heartstrings so fast, right? If my child, I immediately impact my own heart, or we impact somebody's personal experience very quick when we're talking about their children. It's very different. Nutrition is something that's it's a before and a preparation and a, you know, security instead of a fix afterwards. And so it is. I'm very grateful and I'm very thankful for it. But I've said for the last couple of years, man, we really shot our arrow the wrong direction in building an industry.
You know, I remember Charles Holmes. So this was how I was introduced. This is 20 years ago. He's walking in with that horrible, dirty tasting hemp protein, Gen 1. You know? And then he explained to me that this is the exact same protein we build in our bodies. It's the exact same ratio of omega-3 and omega-6. You know, we hear these things where we need omega fatty acids. We don't understand that if we don't get them in the right balance, we're actually not going to absorb them. And like all these things about hemp protein, it being high in magnesium. Can't sleep, you need magnesium. High in fiber. Interesting fact, actually, the hemp hull is like 80% pectin. And pectin is an amazing binder for heavy metals and for fibers. Like it's so perfect. And that's what really drew me to it, was because, you know, if we talk about countries like Africa, even South America, we don't have this in the Northern Hemisphere, but there's cassava or mandioca, which is this root that grows and it's very, very high caloric and it's starchy, right? And that's what they're using to feed the world. That's like giving everybody diabetes. You know, so if we can actually come through and educate people that, okay, we need to just, you know, we just feed this, because it's not just about feeding the world. It's about feeding the world correctly. You know, 90% of the problems we have with an illness in the world can be fixed with food.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Not CBD. I mean, I'm a fan of CBD. Oh, I got to tell you this. So in my research recently, I've been researching because my passion now is to educate people on the fact that animals need to have this. And we think that animals need to have the grain. But if we feed the leaves as fodder, so I found all these studies because people are trying to figure out if you feed hemp to animals, will your steak get you high? Which,
yeah, or will it stack up cannabinoids and then pass that on or whatever?
Remains is THCA and CBDA, which are the non-psychoactive components. They're decarboxylated, and that's where you get the true medicine. So I happen to believe, you know how we talk about the fact that there's the endocannabinoid system?
Yeah.
And so it makes sense. As we evolved, we were around this plant and then we depended on it, right? Like we needed it. Like cannabinoids are an essential nutrient. But I mean, I'm a really, really good hippie, like ridiculously good hippie. I eat a lot of green stuff. And I still could probably not get enough CBD. I probably do. I mean, I eat in the fields and stuff like that. But so how did we develop an endocannabinoid system? We developed it because we fed it to our animals. And then we ate our animals, right? And animals, I mean, if you've had a hemp-fed pork, wow, it's amazing.
Shout out to anybody that's listening right now. Go look up the difference and I'm going to start gathering. I'm working very diligently with a couple of people to start gathering more data and support the existing data that's already pulled for Hemp Feed Coalition and for organizations that are studying this. But the appearance of the beef or the feed or the eggs is the fish. It's night and day difference. And when I was in Costa Rica, when Carl was down there this last time, and I was just like, get a pit in my stomach when you drive by their cattle fields or when you drive by their livestock, and how readily available hemp could be for feed for their, it's just
What kills me is that we feed all of our animals GMO soy. Soy is a phytoestrogen. It acts as a hormone. You know, the only hormones we should have are the hormones we produce. not these. And so, I mean, the myriad of health effects that happen just from not feeding our animals correctly. And you're right, they are so much healthier. A hemp-fed egg, we actually, and that's how we get our nutrition. We're naturally going to eat animals, but also, like, what happens to these animals who are fed this crap food? Don't we want our animals to live a good life? Because if they live a good life and they give their life for us, then we have this possibility of, getting better nutrition through that. But I happen to believe I'm a big fan of hemp as a grain to be fed, but I think we need to push for hemp as fodder. And because that's the way it was. And once again, it doesn't convert. It doesn't convert. When you eat a steak, you're getting CBDA and THCA, which is 10,000 times more potent. Won't get you high because, the THCA, you require decarboxylation, but you're getting all those antioxidants in your meat. Imagine if your meat was like something that would help cure your cancer. Wow. Right?
Or, I say this too. When I first got into this industry, this was like what really blew my mind. I came home and you should have heard the conversation I was having with my children. But, why aren't our cattle or our animals getting all these autoimmune diseases? Right. And so I look at the medicine and the things we're being fed and they're being fed and the science around it, and understanding we have solutions that have been treating them all along that now we could be using or should be using on ourselves. And then coming back to so much of it's curable with cannabis. Like, again, it goes back to the nutrition, or food is medicine, like Robert said, right? This really is the medicine. Nutrition really is the backbone and the start. And yeah.
I'll actually go further because I do love food as the medicine, but hemp is the tool. The only reason that human beings evolved is because we had the ability to make tools, right? We find that in archaeology with arrowheads and all that stuff. What was our greatest tool? It was actually this plant. It was the first domesticated crop. It was what we used for clothing. We don't even know what we use, because the most beautiful thing about it is that, 10,000 years or 5,000 years ago, it ended up biodegrading. So there's your sustainability right there, and we built this tool to be able to do these things, and we need our tool back.
Oh, absolutely. Right. This is and it's funny just now when you said, that we don't know, isn't it said to be true? And I've had a couple of people that we've interviewed that have put some pretty big stiff facts out about, like, the oldest buildings have hemp in them, and the oldest mummy rats are made of hemp. And, so we look at the biodegradability, but we look at what it did for sustainability and for the longevity or the structure of the bodies and the buildings and so forth.
Yeah, as you mentioned before, my partner is Carl Martel, and his ultimate goal. I know we love Carl. Carl is our
everybody loves Carl. Yes.
Yes. But understand. Okay, so we named the company Advanced Botanicals and Biomass. He's biomass. I'm botanicals. Mm-hmm. Okay. But his goal is to develop and find out what Roman concrete was. Right? These things that we did that have stood the test of time. Like, I had a chance to go see Chichen Itza a little while ago. And that is amazing. I actually walked in and went, oh yeah, that looks like that was built by aliens. Like, whoa, that is so amazing that, that we could do that. And that was mostly lime, which is our component of hempcrete. And these are the things that we worked with, because we're not something, what kind of blew my mind being in the natural health industry is when I realized, in order to patent a pharmaceutical, you need to prove that it's never existed on Earth before. Mm-hmm. That makes no sense as to how that's going to be a medicine to me.
Well,
right?
Because this is something I get into. I'd actually would love to have this discussion sometime about where we're at as far as the cannabinoid market and patenting the cannabinoids in each of these, right? Because how was Big Pharma able to grab a hold of CBD, right? And my understanding is because it was not on the market as a nutraceutical or a vitamin first.
No, it's because they were able to fill out the forms correctly. This is the whole thing about the FDA. It has nothing to do with it. It just has to do with the fact that they were able to fill out the forms correctly. And we're the natural health industry. I don't like any of the separation of cannabinoids or all this other stuff is like.
That's that patent. That's what makes it patentable, right? Is breaking it down to an isolate, a single molecule, and then, which is stupid.
That's not the way it should be. Like my best, once again, being a hippie, I grow hemp in my backyard, and people think I'm growing this massive weed plant. It's like, no, you can try to smoke that.
Well, look how you like cranberry. You can go to the counter. I actually had somebody else I interviewed that gave a really good perspective, right? He was having some problems, and whatever the nutrient was he needed is in cranberries, right? And he said you can either go to the pharmacy and buy a pill, or go buy cranberries and cranberry juice, and and so I think that just,
which one's going to work better?
Yeah. This isn't just in the cannabis industry. This is happening. It's in all of our vitamins and nutrients and things like that. It's a matter of like now who's gotten a hold of it, and it's because there's money in it, right? There's opportunity, and so they see this opportunity to capitalize on it. And yeah, go ahead, Erin.
Yeah, I mean, and they don't understand the whole idea around what our food should be. So when you come down to what is an essential nutrient, right? We have our vitamins, we have our amino acids, we have our omega fatty acids. And so I presented this paper to the UN a couple of years ago. And what I was basically making the claim is that cannabinoids are an essential nutrient because a cannabinoid is released at the point of conception. All right. A cannabinoid is actually required for the egg to attach to the urine wall. You give me an example of how much more essential that is. That's essential, right?
Right.
And so, but from that point, I made this argument that, we should have it as a food. And then I went further into it because I'm a really big herbal geek, and figured out that so no, what I was talking about was if you go into human history and you look at things like kava kava, which is a spiritual herb from Polynesia, or you look at turmeric, which is a cornerstone of Ayurveda, they all communicate with the cannabinoid system, endocannabinoid system. So what it means is that human beings are naturally drawn to what we need. Like an animal will find the herb it needs, and animals won't eat things that are bad for them in the wild. So, it just means that we're attracted to this stuff.
We've tried to, again, you just gave me goosebumps because it was just kind of an aha moment to me it literally dropped me to my knees one day when I realized when plastics and hemp crossed. Right, when plastic started to take off and the hemp really dove down. And here we've had this solution this whole time. And we as humans have stepped in the way of our own development or security or housing or anything that we want to put it on. Any of the 17 sustainability goals that we're now addressing, right? We've had this solution for. And last week, I interviewed a young lady and we went over those 17 sustainability goals. And again, I was taken back at where hemp plays a role in every single one of them. And not a little role, a massive role in its impact. And so, yeah, I go back to the value that you add to a country and helping to bring them to market, right? What would you say those countries are? What is the biggest hurdle that they have to overcome that may be different from Canada or the US that are much more established economically?
The government?
Yes.
Sorry. Once again,
did not expect that, but you're right.
It's the government. But once again, there's no shortage of people who want to grow it or have to do it. But actually, I would second to that is the processing. And I'm not saying about processing it into plastics or processing it into the further products. I mean, the basic decortication, hulling, extraction, all those basic things that give us the basic supplies. Because one of the things I absolutely love about this plant is it's the most entrepreneurial plant I've ever seen. People want to make stuff out of it, but we need to get like these countries that we work with. And it's been frustrating to explain this because everybody wants to capture their market. It's like, well, why don't you just start with the basic raw material and then you let everybody else create? I remember I was in Australia and we were meeting with this group of Aboriginals, and this guy came to me. He's like, once we grow hemp, I'm going to make my traditional fishing nets from it. And I was like, exactly. That's what it's about. Once we have it, We're going to make stuff out of it because it was humanity's greatest tool.
And essential. Like those types of things become essential to a small community, right? And it makes it so that they can pull water further or whatever. I'm kind of embarrassed to even talk about this because I am so removed. I live in Utah. I grew up with a great family. I was not exposed culturally, right? And so again, when I go back, I'm just like, why aren't we already doing this? And how can we expedite that, right? How can we as a community or people listening get involved to support you, Erin?
Find me more opportunities to teach. I mean, once again, I started this off telling you that I work for a plant. And any opportunity that I get, I mean, I'm on vacation here, but it doesn't mean that I don't have somebody coming over to talk about the possibilities of hemp here, and find me the opportunity to find those entrepreneurs. Like we've got to build processing facilities. That's the first one. And I know for a fact between Carl and I, we can build you the best processing facility that is whole plant utilization. We build the processing facilities, and my vision is because, as I explained at the early time, I was a very young entrepreneur, and there was not a lot of resources. And if you give the opportunity for entrepreneurs to create, they're going to make magic. And so I mean, my shiny, happy vision, I'm working on it in a couple of countries, is to make processing facilities that have this incorporation with an innovation center, and so that we can just give you the material. You go build. I don't need to build it for you. You go build. That's my passion. That's what I'd like to see after all this work I've done for our beautiful plant. Is I just would like to see human beings have the opportunity to
grow it and use it and the innovation. My most exciting part when you talk about the entrepreneurs attached to the plant and to what's coming of it is this innovation we haven't even begun to dive into, right? We've got a handful of products that are being made. And I've said for a while, if we can get processing, if we can get raw material created and inputs coming in, then our kids can change the world with this.
Any kid an opportunity to do this, biochar to hemp to rope to textile. It's just like, here's your tool. Once again, it's taken me a while to really truly figure out what I was doing. I mean, especially when I said it was almost 20 countries in 2019 and planting hemp. I was like, what am I doing? Like, what's going on? I was like, oh, Mama Nature's giving us back our tool. Oh, that makes a lot of sense, right?
Yes. Then I saw Bill also made a comment that we can address. It says, disruptive innovation is that which leaders in an industry cannot visualize because their existing investments filter their view. What has seen fiber that may be disruptive and lower cost? Great, Bill.
That's great. I mean, the most disruptive thing I can say is Carl's battery. I mean, we can grow our own batteries and we can, charge our house on our walls and everything like that. But the other thing I would say that's disruptive is reducing the impact on the grid. Before we can build batteries into walls, we can actually take down the need for air conditioning in South America. We can take down the need for heating. I'm lucky enough to be good friends with Dan Lefebvre. I know you interviewed him before. Yeah. And I spent a couple of nights in his hemp house. I was actually part of the team that built the microhome. But you spent in his hemp house. So the first night he put on the wood fire and it was so hot we couldn't sleep in there in -30. And it retained its heat in -30 for like a week. Look at what that's going to change right there. That is disruptive especially when we're talking about the price of fuel at the moment. So I've said this for a while when people say, where do I see major potential for this industry is the energy sector, and breaking it back to just the electric vehicles and the weight of the vehicles and what's used on that power grid to charge a country only on electric vehicles, right? And what do we now need to do where the impact hemp plays in just that piece, let alone housing and transfer of energy or batteries and well, I think it's kind of funny that everybody wants to move to electric vehicles and they don't. I'm like, where do you think you're getting the electricity from?
I got into this with somebody the other day about steel too, that the way that they were making steel was, he was like, we're just rolling it. It's not energy, it's not a bad carbon footprint. It's just energy. And I was like, well, how is the steel made? Well, we just put it through a machine and it rolls it. And I was like, you just don't get it. There's just a disconnect, right? And so it's interesting too, when we talk about countries and we're seeing development, countries are being hit with this. We as consumers are still pretty far removed from a lot of the problems that our leaders are addressing or needing to address. And so we're starting to see it really come down from the top, right? Where do you see a difference when you talk about bringing a company to market versus a country to market? You said, it's a lot like we're a global startup, but where do you see real differences and opportunity?
Well, the opportunity would lie in, when you asked me before what the biggest problem is, and I said government, is that governments, I had a big opportunity a long time ago to work with the natural health product regulations in Canada, and I watched what they were doing, and I was educating the government versus if the government could go in with the experts and say, as an example, Ecuador is a perfect example. They've legalized at 1% for industrial hemp. That changes the playing field for them completely. Canada's still at 0.3%. We don't get the opportunity to grow those 16-foot high, gorgeous, high cannabinoid plants because we have this stupid arbitrary number that has been put out there. Like that was a number that was done by a scientist. That had nothing to do with the way that the plant grows. And so if a country can give within their regulatory framework the opportunity for the plant to grow, literally, it's that simple. And so instead of, in a lot of ways, I believe people should copy Canada, because what the biggest, most successful cannabis company in the world is? They sell hemp parts, right? It's Manitoba Harvest. So it's not, the canopies and the, all the other.
And that's that food sector, right, that we talked about, that where we moved our needle and where Canada really came in and said, listen, this.
Well, if you look at the difference, Australia and Canada legalized at the same time. Australia focused on fiber, which should have come second, right? And Australia's market is, there's people trying to build hemp homes and they know it's legalized in Australia, but they're importing their hemp from China or from Europe right now. That's ridiculous, right? And Canada, once again, I was really lucky to work with the Holmes family and understand what the pioneers that created the food market on it and how it is such an important food there. But coming back to the government, Canada still doesn't have the right regulations to grow the right hemp. We need to move it to 1%, right? And Canada's still at 0.3%. That doesn't give us, we have our own genetics and we've been doing it for a long time. Yes, we have our Canadian X59, which is the hemp heart genetic and all those other things. But if we want to expand this, we need to go to countries. Like I said, Ecuador is great. They legalized at 1%. When Paraguay legalized, they legalized at 0.5%, which gave us more opportunity to make that plant completely and totally utilized as our tool.
Well, and it gives us an opportunity to look at quality and standards of fiber production at different rates or different levels of THC, right?
Well, an opportunity innovation as well, because, once we have this, there's, I'm sure, I don't know if you've heard Carl's battery presentation, but he talks about the fact that cannabidiol can be turned into a battery as well. So if we had the opportunity to actually grow, the plants that would produce CBD, 1% is not going to get anybody high. And, but we have this opportunity to even produce terpenes rather than using it from off waste from different, limonene comes from the off waste from the lemon production, all those different things. If we had that wiggle room, or even, wiggle room, this is the one thing that actually bugs me about legalization. I've never met anybody who has accidentally smoked pot. It's available everywhere. And people, if they want it, they will find it. So why are we trying to regulate something that people will, they're not going to walk in and be like, oops, I got high and I don't want to get high. Like people know this is the world's most recognized plant. Why are we regulating something like this?
Okay,
right?
So we're almost out of time, and I want to jump into something really quick because I don't think, maybe they do. If anybody knows Erin and Carl, you get it. These guys know so much knowledge. And Erin, I've kind of used you as a sounding board. Somebody posted something the other day about bees and honey, and I laughed. Or bees and hemp, and I was like, oh, Erin. And I actually reshared the articles that Carl sent me and you sent me. And so can you do me a favor? And I don't know if this can be uncomfortable. It's always uncomfortable when someone asks me, but I wanted to hear why Carl and why. Talk to me about your background. And it's easy to brag about some of Carl's, but kind of go into what some of the projects are you've done and some of the things you two have faced, and what are you currently working on or projects? Where can we follow you?
So I will say we have a website, but right now our contact form is down. So just use the email if you want to get to me. I've been trying to get it up for this info, and I'm not that techie person. I plant hemp. I don't build websites.
Can I share your email here so people can see it?
Yes, it's info@abri.org.
Okay.
And on there, you're going to see some of the articles, and you're going to see a bit of the research that we back. I would highly suggest looking at our whole plant utilization mind map. So that is a web of everything that you can make hemp out of. And we know Carl's background. My background is, a lot of people don't know that my first innovation, well, of many, was I invented the world's first oral insect repellent. So I made a pill that you take and mosquitoes don't bite you. And
I swear I'm born with that. I get bitten, but I've never had I don't get mosquito bites. I'm not allergic to whatever they do.
You know, it's funny because I actually came about it with my clinic, and I'm not a person who gets bit either. But I had this idea that I could change the world, and if you give malaria is the #1 killer of children in the world, so I went there. And then, you know, entrepreneurs happen and things like that happen. And I left that world for hemp, and I realized this was really my tool to change the world. And so I guess, you know, what I do now is I want to teach people how to cook with hemp. I want to teach people how to eat hemp. I want to teach people what it is in many different ways. And what Carl and I do with Abri is we educate. That is our biggest goal. You never have to worry. If you want to call and you have a question, we're always going to be there because we work for a plant. You know, and our boss is a plant, and she wants us to tell the world about it. I'm truly blessed to work with Carl, and he's truly blessed to work with me, by the way, you know, because we have a different understanding of this plant and how to apply it to the world and how to encourage other entrepreneurs to do it. And like I said before, I mean, my experience with launching my product was called Mozzie Q. Was I figured out every single aspect of going to market, not just the boom, we have a product. Well, now we got to get into distribution. Now we got to figure out this. Now we got to figure out this. And I just want to guide people through so it's easier for them than it was for me. But I really, once again, my passion is, and I've got about my hands in about 5 different projects at the moment, is this idea of a processing facility that encourages entrepreneurs. And not to, you kind of said, I'm tooting my own horn. I don't think there's anybody more qualified than Carl and I in the world to build one of those facilities. And it's just because we've been there and we know it and we want to make sure and we have the right intentions. I don't want to build a facility and own it. I want to build a facility and I want the people to own it.
Okay, so I'm going to give something back to you. I just got goosebumps because I agree with you. Not just you, but the people you've built your team with, right, and are surrounded with, are also huge leaders in the industry, from the engineering and innovation and farm and cultivation and so forth. But you did something today that really humbled and made me realize that you really are in the right spot. Not that I doubted it, but it just solidifies it. When I was talking earlier about building processing on native property or on, Indian nations or with Indian nations, and you were very clear that this is about building for the people, and so I go back to, what is it that we're in this for, and what is the true value of the plant? And I look at, you've done entrepreneur, you've done big business, small business, and working with countries on all scales. And so being able to look at the industry from a completely different perspective than those that are literally in the weeds. They cannot see the trees through the forest, right? And so, or the forest through the trees, whichever way that goes. But yeah, so I go back to where credit is due. Both you and Carl have done some exceptional things and are traveling all over the world teaching. How can I participate? How can I join in more? I would love to. I actually sent both of you an email just now, but I'd love to explore getting you involved in an education committee for GHA, where we look at, what are these facts and data that's been put out, and what peer-reviewed data is available, or what do we need to really start gathering to build these bridges and then make it accessible, like you said, so that my whole goal in doing this and the value part of our membership is I want to expedite. I don't want you to have to take 2 years to get the knowledge or the network that we've built, right? Let's speed that up or narrow down facts without filtering through a bunch of garbage. And so,
well, we're remembering something. We're not actually doing something from scratch. We're remembering. And so as we remember, we need to share this. We need to, we need to spread our knowledge in any way I possibly can. I'm there. One of the things I love is, I call us hempsters. There's hempsters around the world. It's like, oh shit, I learned this and now I have to devote my life to it. Okay, because it makes sense.
Anytime there's someone new I talk to that's like, oh, I'm so in, I was like, all right, you're hooked. Just get on the train. Come with us.
Welcome to the club. You're now a hamster and it's going to be a crazy ride, right? So, it's about connecting people. And I love what you're doing with the association. And, what I love is every time we've had an email or we've had a conversation, you always start with, you always end with, now, how can I help you? Right? And that's what I'm the same way as, how can I help you? Because this is way bigger. Once again, when I say I work for a plant, I mean it. She conscripted me. And anybody who figures this out, they go, whoa, and so it's
they
how do we build
it too?
What?
I said they drink the Kool-Aid too. Like it's once you get it, and everybody says that, like once you really start to see what it does, it's just like, how can I feel good about myself turning away at this point? Like,
yeah, exactly. I have no choice. Okay, here I go. It was the same thing with when I found it and I figured out what it was possible on. It's like, okay, all right. And, she'll guide you. This plant will guide you. This is my spiritual part is, we're getting our tool back. Mother Nature will never leave us behind. That's not possible because we are her, right? Pachamama. This is the goddess of agriculture. I wear it and I love it because what it means is that we're not alone. And so, yes, we have this huge opportunity. Congratulations, humanity. You just got your tool back. Now, what you going to do with it? Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Don't mess it up again. I see a couple of connections happening in our chat, and James Doyle is, I don't know if you've already met him, Erin, but I would love for Carl and him and you to connect. He's a young kid who is changing the auto industry. He's extremely passionate. He's extremely educated and bright and has interviewed thousands of basically anybody that should be or is well known in the auto industry. He has interviewed. And so he's looking to bring hemp into this space and build hemp batteries. So Carl, I would love to connect you with James because he's that generation we're talking about, and he's very passionate. Him and his dad have lots of great things going on. And Randall, I saw you made a connection too. If he has a website, maybe I'll send out just an email intro between Carl, Randall, and James. But yeah, James and his dad are doing awesome things. So.
Okay, and a shout out to Jeremy. I've been watching him. Jeremy is one of the people on our team too, and I love him intensely. He is such an awesome person in this. So yeah, helping people introducing to plants. So, shout out to him. I love him.
Yes. Okay, well, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up? We're right at an hour, and I would love to keep talking to you, but I want you to enjoy your time and have a great day.
Oh, well, no, I'd love to talk to you too. No, all I got to say is that we've got this. Yes. We got our plant back. It's going to be easy now. We got this. We just have to find ourselves and bring ourselves together and learn and grow and literally grow. It starts with the seed.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Erin. And thanks, Carl, for jumping in. Jeremy as well. A love for life. I wish I knew your name, but hello. I can see your picture on there. But again, Erin, if you need anything, if anybody else that's listening is looking for connections, resources, tools, education opportunities, thank you very much, Erin. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening.
Thank you, my friend, and thank you for doing what you do. I'm always amazed by you. And, once again, our boss, she can be a stickler. And so, maybe we'll have an employee appreciation month eventually. But thank you once again for what you do.
Please, please. Here's another great project. Bobby and Peter are building on the East Coast. Another great project to get involved in. So, Peter, let's reach out to Erin and Carl and see if we can't get them involved. Bobby's a rock star woman too. We'll see if we can't get her on for an interview here pretty soon.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Talk later.